Hey, I'm Hannah. Today we're exploring how pollution travels through a watershed. If you remember from our previous activities, stormwater runoff is water from rain or melting snow that runs off or flows across hard surfaces instead of seeping into the ground. Knowing what stormwater runoff is really important for this lesson too. A watershed is an area from which all of the stormwater runoff is collected or drained into one location. For example, think about a schoolyard. All of the stormwater runoff from the schoolyard drains down to one location, usually a storm drain or a series of storm drains. A small watershed like a schoolyard combines with other small watersheds in an area to make larger ones. The school is part of the bigger watershed in Omaha. The city of Omaha is part of the Papillion Creek watershed, which covers 402 square miles and includes not only Omaha, but also parts of Sarpy and Washington counties. That means that all of the water in Omaha drains into one of the tributaries that leads to the Papillion Creek. All of the water that in the Papillion Creek then leads into the Missouri River, and then into the Mississippi River, and eventually all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. So what we do right here in Omaha, in our watershed, affects the water all the way down to the ocean. For our activity today, we're working with this watershed model. Now this is a model of a city, of a community, and all of the water in this community drains down here to the lake. Now if I pull out the bottom of the lake, what we see is all of our fish and other animals in nice, healthy, clean water. I'm going to put the lake back. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some common things that people do and how they live in the city and things that cause pollution that they might not realize cause pollution. And then what we're going to do is we're going to brainstorm some ways to mitigate or reduce that pollution. So let's start with thinking about the areas around our home. We like to have a nice place to live, right? And we like to have a nice yard so we can hang out outside. So we might do things like add fertilizer to the plants in the garden around our house. Fertilizers are chemicals that help plants to grow. And it doesn't seem like a bad thing. It helps our plants to grow healthy and strong. But many people use more fertilizer than they actually need. So I'm going to put some fertilizer down. I'm going to put down maybe a little bit more fertilizer than I need, because that's actually what most people do. Now, in order to have a healthy lawn, I'm also going to make sure that I mow the grass and keep it looking nice and trim. But I have to admit, sometimes I'm a little bit lazy. And so I'm going to mow the lawn, but I'm not going to clean up the stuff that's on the street and the sidewalk. I'm going to leave that there. So the grass clippings that go on the street and the sidewalk, I'm going to leave them right where they are. Now you might be thinking, okay, I get it, the chemical fertilizers might cause pollution, but how does grass cause pollution? It's nature, right? Well, the issue isn't one person's grass. The issue is the amount of grass that we have in the city, all going down the storm drains. If you think about it, all of the houses here are mowing their lawns. And since all of these homes have lawns that they're mowing, if they all leave grass in the street and in the sidewalk, it goes down into the storm drain. And from the storm drain, it'll go into the creek. And from the creek, it'll go into the lake. That's a lot of extra grass that's going into our lake. And all of that extra grass creates excess nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus in the water. And those excess nutrients then lead to uncontrolled growth of algae and other aquatic weeds. Now, those aquatic weeds suffocate other plants and animals and reduce the biodiversity that we have in our lake. So that's why they're causing a problem. But we're not thinking about that when we mow our lawn. What we're thinking about is having a nice lawn. And now that we have a nice lawn, we want to spend some time outside. But as we're spending some time outside, we notice that sometimes there's some pests around, right? So we notice that on our deck, we've got some wasps that are living there. We don't really want to live around the wasps. So we're going to spray some pesticides. And we're going to spray those pesticides around the tree where the wasps are living, and maybe around the eaves of our house where they like to build their nests also. So we're going to spread those pesticides around. And we also now have a nice yard that we want to spend outside. We have a family dog. So we're going to take our dog out. Here's our dog. And we're going to take him for a walk. Now our dog likes to go outside. And he, unfortunately, when he goes for a walk, he poops a lot. So, so we're going to follow him around. That was a lot of poop. So we're going to follow him around. We're going to put that poop underneath him. And so now we've got poop on our walk, right? And because he pooped kind of in the backyard, we're gonna just kind of leave it there. No one's gonna notice. It's between my house and my neighbor's house, but no one's really gonna care. So we're just gonna leave it there, okay? Now we also need to take care of the area around our home. And here in Omaha, it can get pretty icy in the wintertime. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down some Deicer so that the sidewalks in the street are going to not get frozen over and be too slippery for people to travel on. So we're going to put down some Deicer. Now, salt or chemical deicer on the streets is really important because we want to be able to get around in the wintertime and not have accidents and not fall and get hurt. But we also have to think about the fact that that deicer, when the ice all melts and the snow all melts, where does it go, right? So we have to think about that as well. Another thing that we like to do around our home, we like to drive. We've got our little car here. We like to drive, and cars need a lot of maintenance, right? So we need to change the oil in our car. And some people take their car to a shop to get the oil changed, and some people do it at home. And there are some people who don't know about watersheds and storm drains who will change their oil and then actually dump the oil down into the storm drain. So I'm going to dump my oil down into the storm drain here after I change my car. Some people just haven't learned about it. They just don't know. So now we're going to dump our oil down there. And we've got these nice cars, and we like to drive our cars. And so we're actually going to drive our car all the way over here to this little restaurant, and we're going to get some fast food, right? We're going to get some takeout. And actually in the United States, litter, one of the biggest forms of litter is actually fast food waste. So we're going to add some litter over here, our fast food waste that we dumped out of our car after we ate, and we're going to leave it right there. Sometimes, like around the fast food place or around the highway, people will actually litter on purpose. But sometimes litter happens even when we don't mean for it to. I can remember a time when I littered and I knew I was littering and there was nothing I could do about it. I teach people about not littering, and I've done it before. So this time that I can think of really distinctly is I was outside, I was in a parking lot with my 2 kids. They were 1 and 3 at the time. And the wind blew and something flew out of our car, some trash flew out of our car. And I couldn't chase it down safely because I was in a parking lot with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I couldn't just leave them standing in a parking lot to go chase a piece of trash. So I littered, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. Even with the best of intentions, sometimes litter happens. Sometimes it's one piece of litter, like from my car, and sometimes it's trash from our trash cans that blows away on a windy day. It happens. As you can see, so I'm gonna add just a little bit of trash over here because sometimes it happens even when we don't mean for it to. So as you can see, our city has actually become pretty polluted. Now, what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to simulate the rain. So I'm going to start having it rain on my city. And as you can see, the stormwater runoff in this activity is what's gonna happen next. So as it rains and as the snow melts, all of the pollution that's on the streets is gonna start to flow. It's gonna flow down the streets into the creeks. It's gonna flow down the storm drain into the lake. And now we can see all of this grossness, all of the pollution that's going down our city and into that lake. So as the rain falls, the stormwater runoff picks up all of the pollution and carries it down the roads, down the storm drains, into the tributaries, into the creeks, and into the lake. Now, if I pull out the bottom of the lake, you'll see that my fish, which are swimming in nice, clear water at the beginning of this activity, are now swimming in gross, disgusting water. And that's not a good habitat for them. When you think about it, most of our drinking water in Omaha comes either from the Platte or the Missouri River. So when we pollute our waterways, we're actually polluting our own drinking water. Now, at the water treatment facility in Omaha, they'll clean the water and make it safe for us to drink. But the more polluted it is, the harder and more expensive it is to make that water drinkable. Now, if we look outside, most of that pollution is not visible. It doesn't look orange and red like my watershed table does here. We can't see those pesticides and fertilizers. But have you ever stopped to look at a puddle in the rain? The next time you see a puddle on the side of the road, take a minute and look at it. You'll most likely see a rainbow of colors in the puddle. Now, it looks really pretty, but that rainbow of colors is actually the pollution on the road becoming visible. For the last part of this activity, I'm going to challenge you to think critically. I want you to think about all of the pollution that we just added to this city. Which of these things have you or your family done? Be honest with yourself. Make a list of the things that you have done that may have caused pollution. And then for each of the things on your list, try to come up with a few alternatives. What could you do differently to reduce or even eliminate the pollution entirely? Now, this can be easy in some cases, and it can be really, really tricky in others. Try to figure out what you could do that would help to mitigate the pollution and help to keep our waterways clean.